Frasier, who are these two guys you brought along? And why are you being so mysterious? Brett asked. He felt that his friend was acting out of character, and he almost didn't recognize him anymore. Frasier realized he couldn't hide things any longer, so he said, "Let me introduce you to Ryan and Ox. Have you ever heard of Three Eyes?" Although Brett wasn't involved in the underworld, he had heard the name Three Eyes before. "I've heard of them, but what's the connection with these two?" Then, he remembered the skills of the two and said in disbelief, "Oh, are you saying that these guys are members of Three Eyes?" Ryan said, "We used to be. Now, Ox and I have joined a new team. It's called Heaven Breakers, and Frasier is our boss." "Frasier, what are you doing? This is no joke," Brett said seriously. Frasier said, "Brett, you and I had a business that we lost. Yet we went back and regained control of it. That shows that we're the same kind of people. We both want to prove ourselves. I'll give you two choices. You can continue operating Frando Tech, and I'll invest $10 million in you. If you choose that, we won't be able to meet very often in the future because my path is dangerous. The other choice is for you to follow me on the path I'm taking." Brett was so shocked that he could hardly breathe. This was his good friend, Frasier, who had joined the Laplace family as their good-for-nothing son-in-law. How things had changed. He had thought that he knew who Frasier was, but suddenly he wasn't so sure. "You lied to me, Frasier. For more than 3 years," he complained. "Yes." Brett's breathing grew heavier. It was obvious that he was furious. "Don't you have anything else to say? Do you have any further explanations?" he asked. "No. What I wanted to say has been said." "In that case, I've made my choice. I don't want the company you gave me," Brett said in disgust. Ryan and Ox didn't hold any hope after hearing that. They took it that Brett was ending his friendship with Frasier. However, they noticed a smile on Frasier's face and wondered what was happening. Just as the two of them were trying to figure it out, they heard Brett continue, "I choose your path." Ryan and Ox felt relieved. Just then, 2 more people rushed in. They were Jordan Whitehead and Liam Young. Jordan said, "I was scared to death, Brett. I was afraid that you wouldn't agree." Brett didn't understand what they were doing there, and he inquired. Frasier said, "I've been planning for us to get together for a while. Liam stole Simon's company secrets." "The 4 of us will be a great team again," said Liam. Brett was furious when he heard that. He thought that Frasier had gotten himself into some sort of trouble, and he had almost called the police. Now, he realized that Frasier was playing an entirely different game, and Jordan and Liam were in on it. "Oh, you 3 have been hiding this from me all this time? Frasier, come over here. I promise I won't beat you to death." Frasier returned home with a black eye. "What's that on your face?" Natalia asked when she saw him. I got into a fight with Mr. Andrews, and he beat me up." Frasier didn't dare tell the truth, so he casually lied. "Serves you right," she said. "If you can't even be a security guard, I really don't know what else I can expect from you." Frasier cooked dinner as usual, and it was greatly appreciated. Natalia said, "Your cooking is quite delicious. Especially this chicken. Give me another serving, Frasier." He took her plate and gave her a generous helping. Natalia looked concerned. She had never asked Frasier for anything, but after getting married, he had always provided her with her favorite meals. Since Frasier had started cooking, she had fallen in love with him again. She felt awful for treating him poorly and wanted to apologize. She gathered her courage, and as Frasier sat down, she whispered, "Well, Simon called me and apologized. I misunderstood you yesterday." "What did you say?" asked Sheila, who was sitting opposite her. Frasier also looked as if he wanted to hear it again. "Forget it," she said. "It wasn't anything important, so let's just eat." Natalia was so embarrassed that she blushed and put her head down as she continued to eat her dinner. Frasier was elated. He had heard clearly that his wife had taken the initiative and tried apologizing to him. The next day, Frasier went to work early so he could speak to Brett. He also called Ryan in because the business matter from the previous day hadn't been resolved. "Brett, how's the acquisition of Mendelsohn Industries progressing?" "You don't need to worry about that. All the shareholders of Mendelsohn are ours now." Brett was incredibly good at what he did. And with Frasier's backing, he was free to do what he wanted. So he acted quickly and decisively. Frasier turned to Ryan and said, "Mendelsohn Industries will be Heaven Breaker's home from now on. It's much safer and more convenient than the old base." "Boss, if we want to move there, I'm afraid it won't be that easy." Frasier and Brett both waited for an explanation. "I mean, that we'll have to deal with Frankie. And he has the backing of a ruthless man," Ryan continued. "As for who that person is, our people have yet to find out." Ryan felt that they would anger Frankie and the more dangerous forces behind the scenes if they weren't careful. "Ryan, can you help me make an appointment with Frankie?" asked Frasier. "Boss, what are you thinking of doing?" Ryan asked anxiously. Brett was also shocked. He was worried that Frasier was planning to fight head-on. Even though Ryan was concerned, he still contacted Frankie's subordinates. "Boss, I found him. Frankie is currently at the Heart Bar, which is also in his territory," Ryan exclaimed. "Let's go and introduce ourselves to him, Ryan," Frasier ordered. Ryan didn't want to face Frankie head-on as an enemy, but he had to listen to his boss's orders. "What? Just you and me?" he asked nervously. "With only two of us, we'll easily be killed if things turn nasty. The Heart Bar is Frankie's base, and all of his men are likely to be there." Brett stood in front of Frasier and said, "Ryan's right. Don't be stupid. We should think it over carefully and come up with a solution. Let's not rush into this. Just relax and get on with what you need to do while you wait for my good news." Frasier patted Brett's shoulder. His voice had been full of confidence, and Brett could only reluctantly agree. When Frasier left the office, Ryan followed him. He had decided to work for Frasier, so he couldn't refuse his boss's request, even though he thought the visit with Frankie was borderline crazy. At the Heart Bar, Ryan led the way in. Their appearance caused several of the customers to turn around and look. One of them was a tiger-tattooed, brawny man. In an unfriendly tone, he said, "Is that you, Ryan? We don't often see you here." He provoked Ryan by intentionally blocking his path. "What's the problem?" Ryan asked. "I just wanted to find out how you're doing," said the man. "I heard that you've been doing pretty well these days. Someone told me that you've replaced Gary as the boss of Three Eyes. Is that right?" "I'm not interested in talking to you," Ryan said. "Call Frankie out." The man became more unfriendly and said, "Hey, big shot. Do you think you're so important now that you have Frankie at your command?" A fight was about to break out when a voice called from the bar. "Ryan, Frankie has invited you in to see him." Ryan and Frasier made their way over toward the man who had spoken. He showed them into a private room where Frankie was sitting. He was smoking a cigar and casually playing with his dagger. "Sit down," he said. When they sat down, he continued. "I'm surprised to see you, Ryan. What brings you here?" "Frankie. "This is my boss, Frasier," said Ryan. Frankie swallowed a mouthful of smoke and looked Frasier up and down. He decided that the man didn't appear to be anything special and laughed disdainfully. The other people in the room started asking questions. "Ryan, what are you talking about? We were told that you were the boss."
"Frasier? That name sounds familiar. It's the same name as that loser who lives with the Laplace," Frankie instigated him. With that reminder, Frankie recalled who the man was. He smiled and said, "Bro, you might want to consider changing your name. Being mistaken for that worthless son-in-law of the Laplace family must have brought you a lot of trouble, right?"
Everyone in the room was laughing. Frasier said expressionlessly, "I don't need to do that, because I am that good-for-nothing son-in-law, as you call me." 10 seconds of silence followed his admission. It seemed as if a century had passed before the room burst into laughter. The laughter continued until Frankie finally raised his hand and restored order.
"Ryan, are you kidding me?" he asked. "You've let this loser become your boss? Bringing him here to speak to me is very disrespectful."
Frankie felt that Ryan had brought a loser to have a conversation with him as an equal in order to humiliate him. Frankie's men took their boss's look of anger as a cue and took a few steps forward, ready to start a fight. "Frankie, you'd better think this through," said Frasier. "If you attack us, you'll lose our cooperation." Frankie was bemused. He smiled and questioned.
"Cooperation? What gives you the idea to think that you have the right to cooperate with me?"
Ryan was concerned about how things were going and secretly sent a message for Ox and the gang to join them. However, Frasier surprised both Ryan and Frankie when he said, "I can get you out of Hugh's control." Frankie seemed to have seen a ghost as he stared at Frasier. Hugh Stiles was once his best friend. However, he had become extremely powerful in San Clemente. He had accumulated a lot of compromising evidence relating to Frankie, which he used to get him to do whatever he wanted. The evidence he had was enough to destroy Frankie.
"How do you know about Hughes? And who the hell are you?" Frankie asked.
He realized that there just might be more to Frasier than he realized. "It doesn't matter who I am. If I can help you deal with Hugh, you can't refuse me." Frasier took 2 steps ahead. Frasier's words hit Frankie's heart. It was true that he didn't have the option of refusing. Hugh squeezed him so hard that he wouldn't throw away the one chance to get out of his old friend's grip.
"How sure are you that you can deal with Hugh?"
he asked suspiciously.
"Also, what are your conditions?"
"I won't give you any assurances. You're just going to have to trust me. I have only one condition, and that's that you don't get involved in anything Ryan wants to do." Frankie had a feeling of trust that he had rarely felt before. Frasier wasn't going to give him any guarantee, but in his heart, he trusted him. Within seconds, he made up his mind. He reckoned that someone who had been humiliated and ridiculed for 3 years must have a level of patience that an ordinary person couldn't achieve. Furthermore, he had been successful in taking over 3 eyes. He wondered who Frasier really was, and why he had been living as the Laplace's son-in-law.
"I'll work with you,"
Frankie finally said. When his subordinates heard him comply so easily, they tried to persuade him to change his mind.
"Frankie, surely you can't take this nobody seriously. He doesn't have any skills, so what guarantee can we have? He'll get us all killed,"
another one of Frankie's mates spoke. Some of the men wanted to beat up Frasier. Frankie could see his men turning angry, so he said,
"I've already decided. Whoever is not convinced can get the hell out of here.
The debate immediately stopped. Frankie turned to Frasier and said coldly,
But if you can't deliver, I won't hesitate to stab you in the back and hand you the Hugh.
The two sides reached an agreement. After Frasier left the bar, a rat-like person snuck out of the bar, found a secluded corner, and made a call.
Hugh, I have something to report.
Call me Mr. Styles,
Hugh said.
Mr. Styles, Frankie wants to break away from you. He's teamed up with Ryan.
Interesting. Ryan is just a piece of meat in Three Eyes. I'm not afraid of Three Eyes, so why would I be afraid of him?
Ryan has a new boss, and he's that loser son-in-law from the Laplace family. He was the one who offered to help Frankie break free.
Hugh Styles laughed.
So, a loser like that wants to deal with me, does he? Well, I'll finish him at first sight.
In the boss's office at Frandotech, Brett was relieved to see that Frasier was okay.
Frasier, you worried me to death. I was starting to think that you weren't coming back.
Don't worry. I'm not in a hurry to die. I've got a lot to live for. Frasier went to make coffee. He had been speaking a lot and his mouth was dry.
How did it go? Brett asked.
Seeing that Frasier was focused on making coffee, Ryan coughed and said,
Mr. Andrews, let me tell you. After the boss spoke to Frankie, everything was sorted out. We're going to work together with Frankie to deal with Hugh Styles.
Brett was speechless to hear that name.
Oh, Hugh Styles? Didn't Hugh die 2 years ago? He asked.
At one time, Hugh and Frankie had both been infamous. With the two of them working together, no one dared to offend either of them. Rumor had it that Hugh had been killed by a sniper working for his enemy. If Hugh hadn't been stopped then, San Clemente would have been taken over by both of them.
Mr. Andrews, you've been tricked. Hugh wasn't killed. He kept a low profile and then started to control Frankie in order to deal with his enemy. Hugh had collected lots of dirt on Frankie. So, Frankie always did what he asked, Ryan confirmed.
Brett digested what Ryan had said and was surprised by Hugh's schemes and tricks. Frasier spoke up. We need to make sure nothing happens to the company. Now that my wife works here, she needs to be watched carefully. Ryan, you should send some men and keep an eye on the Robster Corporation too.
Do you think something's going to happen soon?
Brett asked. Frasier nodded but didn't explain any further. When he had been in the private room with Frankie, he noticed there was a spy who was most likely working for Hugh. Based on his understanding of Hugh, it was highly likely he would be the one to move first and deal with Frasier by targeting his companies and his wife. That afternoon, Frasier returned home early after going to the market to buy Natalia's favorite fish. He planned to make her some soup. Just as he neared the entrance to Sheila's building, she saw two familiar figures. Dorothy and Houstus were snooping around. Frasier didn't know why they were there, and he didn't want to talk to them. He tried to walk past them without being seen, but was spotted.
Frasier, it's no use pretending that you didn't see us,
said Dorothy. No, Mom and Dad, I got some dust in my eyes, so I was rubbing them.
Really? I'm not sure I believe you,
said Dorothy. Look, do you want to come inside and talk? He asked reluctantly.
Lead the way,
said Dorothy.
It doesn't look like a very good neighborhood. I hope that your house is more respectable than the ones I'm seeing here.
Frasier was unmoved by her criticism. The moment they entered the house, Frasier went into the kitchen to cook while Dorothy and Houstus started to look around the house with disapproving looks. Frasier, it's disgraceful that you're letting my daughter live in this crappy place, said Dorothy. You also have Sheila here, so you must have to wait in line to use the bathroom. Can't you do anything about it? Frasier ignored her and continued chopping up the fish a little too aggressively.
Hey guys, Frasier here. Listen to the full episode of Unraveling the Son-In-Law exclusively on Pocket FM app. Click the link in description to install the app now.